This tutorial shows you how to most easily visualize the results from structure and make a publication-ready figure. There are a lot of ways to do this, but I believe this is the easiest way and it produces a good product. I also prefer it when I can customize a figure with a point-and-click graphical user interface. This tutorial uses the results created by another tutorial called How to Use the Program Structure. Then we used another tutorial called How to Use pophelper in R to decide which results from structure to use. See the show notes on YouTube or my website for these other videos about structure and more. This tutorial assumes you are using Ubuntu Linux version 20.04 as your operating system. If you do not have Linux, you can emulate it on your Windows or Mac computer for free. See the show notes for details. In fact, I am emulating Linux right now on my computer using VirtualBox. I have a VirtualBox virtual machine pre-configured with the software I will show you today, as well as other population genetics and ecological niche modeling software. See the show notes below for step-by-step instructions to download and hook up this virtual machine within your Windows or Mac computer. This tutorial assumes you have Inkscape installed. See the show notes for a link. It is an easy install as far as Linux goes, or you can use my pre-configured virtual machine, in which case you will not have to install anything. I will be showing you how to do this using LibreOffice Calc and LibreOffice Draw from the LibreOffice suite. But you can do the same thing using Microsoft Office, even on Linux. Microsoft makes an online version of their Office suite available for free that looks and works just like the paid version, and that works on any platform, including Linux. See the show notes for a link to the online and free version of Microsoft Office that you can use on Linux through a web browser. Also, you can see the show notes for a tutorial written a few years ago showing how to make this figure using Microsoft Office. But for this tutorial, we will use LibreOffice, which comes with Ubuntu Linux. First, open a web browser and navigate to my website, joshbanta.com. Click on Tutorials. Then scroll down until you find How to Most Easily Visualize the Results from Structure and Make a Publication-Ready Figure. Click on File Needed for Tutorial. When the page has finished loading, click the Download button and select Direct Download. The file has finished downloading. We can close the web browser. Next, we will move the file to the desktop. Open File Explorer. If you're using my virtual machine, it will be pinned to the side, or you can search for it below. Click on Downloads. Take the file from the Downloads folder, drag it to the Desktop folder. A quick word about this file. This file is from the earlier tutorial, How to Use pophelper to decide which results from structure to use. Refer to there to understand why we will use this file. We will make a folder to keep all the files we will create today together. From the desktop, with desktop selected, from the File Explorer window, choose New Folder from the drop-down menu. We will name the new folder Structure Figures. Click the Create button. Move the file into the Structure Figures folder. Now let's open up that file and take a look. Double-click on the Structure Figures folder. Double-click on the file. Starting at line 60 are the results that we need. Highlight from line 60 all the way to line 69. If you are on a Windows type mouse, you can right-click. If you are on a Mac laptop, push with 2 fingers on the trackpad and select Copy. Now you can close the file. We will open up LibreOffice Calc. You either have it pinned to the side like me, or you can search for it below. With the cursor in space A1, if you are on a Windows type mouse, right-click. If you are on a Mac laptop, push the trackpad with 2 fingers, and then select Paste. We need to get our data to paste properly with the proper divisions between the cells. Choose Fixed Width. Then put your cursor over the arrow so that you get this line to appear. Make sure your cursor is over the arrow. Put the first line right here by clicking. Then put the second line right about here by clicking. Put the third line right about here by clicking. The fourth line should go somewhere in between these 2 sets of numbers here by clicking. Then another number here, another division between the 2 sets of numbers here, another division between the 2 sets of numbers here, and keep going. We have another line right here. I haven't clicked anything, but there's no need to. With your screen looking like this, click OK. Our actual data is based upon 4 inferred ancestral groups. 1 ancestral group, 2nd ancestral group, 3rd ancestral group, 4th ancestral group. The names of our individuals are in this column here. So each one of our individuals is made up of percentages of 1, 2, 3, 4 ancestors. Highlight the data for just the percentages of the 4 ancestral groups. Next, click on Insert Chart. Choose Column and select the third type, Percent Stacked. Click on Finish. The rest of the work is about fixing the labels and making it look nice. Let's start by clicking on one of these horizontal marks going up and down the graph. You see how I have them all highlighted together such that there's a little blue square, each one corresponding to each one of those horizontal bars? With all of them highlighted, hit the Delete key. This is the names of the inferred ancestral groups. Typically, in a structure plot, you do not keep this legend because we don't know any names for these inferred ancestors. So what you want to do is get that entire legend to be highlighted and then click on Delete. By the way, if you ever are having trouble editing on the graph, it might be because you haven't entered inside of the graph. If you ever get out of it, you may need to double click on it to go back inside to where it's editable. Next, I'm going to click on just the y-axis here. You can see I have just the y-axis highlighted. Now I will double click on it. I will click on Font. I will choose Bold. I like Liberation Sans, so I will stick with it. I will change the font size to about 16 point. I'll click on the tab up here for line. For the color, I will change it to black. For the width, I will change it to 0.03 inches. And I will click OK. Now I will do the x-axis. You can see I have just the x-axis highlighted because I've got a square there and a square there. Now I will double click on it. Nope, that selected the y-axis again. See? I have to make sure I have just the x-axis highlighted. There it is, blue square, blue square. I've got just the x-axis highlighted. Now I will double click somewhere along that line. Starting with the line tab, I will make the color black, and I'll set the line width to 0.03 inches. There's a little border going around the plot. You can see it in gray. See if I can get out of the plot so you can see. You see that little border going around the top there that's in a gray or in a very thin line? It's a different thickness than the rest of our axes. So I want to fix that too. All right, I'm just going to double click to jump back into the graph. So now I'm going to try to highlight the whole outline. There we are. And you can see I've got the whole outline highlighted because it's marked by those gray squares. Keeping the whole outline highlighted, I will double click on it. I'll choose black. I'll choose 0.03 inches for thickness. And I'll click OK. If you don't want to have that outline around one of your figures, I could have also, when I had it highlighted, just deleted it. But I will choose to keep it. Let's come back to our x-axis again. We should fix the font size. So we'll come back down here. Nope, I don't have it highlighted right. I needed to show just the blue square here and here. There we are. Now I know I have just the x-axis highlighted. Now, staying right along the x-axis, I'll double click. We'll come to font. I'll keep Liberation Sans. I'll change it to bold. And I'll change it to a 16-point font. Now select OK. We're getting closer, but we're not there yet. These numbers here are simply the numbers 1 through 8, corresponding to the first row of data, so on and so forth until the 8th row of data. LibreOffice doesn't know where the labels for my rows of data are. LibreOffice doesn't know what the names of the individuals in my rows of data are. To fix that, I want to have the whole chart area highlighted. You can see that I have the whole chart area highlighted because I have this gray border and these little gray squares. With the whole thing highlighted, if I have a Windows type mouse, I will right click. If I am on a Mac laptop, I will push down on the trackpad with 2 fingers and choose data ranges from the list. If you start out with your dialog box saying data range, click on the other tab that says data series on the right. Have the first item in your data series highlighted. Then, down where it says categories, choose this button to select data range. Back on your spreadsheet, highlight the labels that correspond to the names of your individuals. These are the labels that correspond to the names of my individuals. These are the names of some individual plants. So I will drag the mouse starting with that first label down to the last label. You should have dragged rows B3 through B10. If not, you can try again. Click OK. And now we have the proper labels. This is individual named 1. This is the individual named 15. And so on. This is the individual named JB06. We're pretty close. We just need to get rid of the white spaces and change these colors to a set of colors that we prefer. Start by working on this first color here that comprises the individual 1. So we will click on it. I only single clicked. Notice that all of the places that have that same ancestry are highlighted. So individual 1 is entirely comprised of that blue ancestor. Individual 2 has a tiny portion of that blue ancestor. Individual 3 is entirely comprised of that blue ancestor. And so on. But the important thing I want you to notice is that all of those segments from that same ancestor are highlighted together. I accomplished this by finding a big chunk of that color and clicking on it once. That made everything that is from that same ancestral group also highlighted at the same time. Now I will go back to one of the big chunks, the chunk where I single clicked once, and now I will double click. What that means is I am now changing the color for that entire series, for that entire ancestral group. Click on Area. For the color, let's make the color red. This is optional, but I like to put a border around these colors. Choose Style, Continuous. Keep the color black. Make the width 0.03 inches. Click OK. There. We've changed the color for that inferred ancestor to red. Now let's do this green inferred ancestor. I'm going to single click once on this large area of the same color. That's highlighted all of the areas that are that same color. Now I will go back to the original one and very carefully double click. I will start by selecting Area. I'll make this color blue. Then I'll select Border. For Style, I'm going to choose Continuous. I'll keep the color black. For the width, I'll come in here and I'll make the width 0.03 inches and select OK. Done. This one's already been done. This one's been done. Let's move on to this color here. So you can see that I have all of the individuals, their segments that are that ancestor highlighted together. I'll come back to the original one, very carefully double click on it. Under Area, I will make this one yellow, a brighter yellow, and I will click on Borders. Choose Continuous, keep the color black, change the width to 0.03 inches. We're almost there, just one more. So the individuals that have this inferred ancestor are both selected. I come back to the original one, carefully double click on it, select Area. I will make this one orange. Next, select Borders, choose Continuous, keep the color black, change the width to 0.03 inches, and then select OK. We still have to fix the gaps to get rid of those white spaces. To do that, let's just go back to this red bar here with all of the individuals with that red ancestor highlighted. I will come back to the first one and very carefully double-click on it. Under Options, I'm going to make the spacing, which refers to the spacing between the bars, between the different columns, 0. But you need to do this slowly. Otherwise, the software gets overwhelmed and it gets jammed. At least it does on my virtual machine. If you have a faster Linux machine, you may not have this problem. You can't go in here and edit it. You have to do it with the minus button, as far as I could figure out. So just go down a little bit. Now don't get overly enthusiastic and click 1,000 times, because then the machine will get jammed and you'll be waiting for the machine to get caught up with all of your clicks. At least that's how it is on my virtual machine. On a real Linux machine, you may not have these limitations. But the best thing to do is to just slowly click your way down to 0% by hitting the minus button over and over. And don't get too far ahead of your clicks with what you see on the screen. All right, now hit OK. It worked. Now we need to export this graph in an image format. First, we're going to get out of the graph by clicking on some other place on the spreadsheet far away. Now I will come back to the graph and I will click on it, but just once, so that I just see these gray squares defining the outline. Then, with my cursor inside of the graph, on a Windows-type mouse, I will right-click. On a Mac laptop, I will push down with 2 fingers on the trackpad. And I will select Export as Image from the drop-down menu. For the list of possible image formats in the bottom, I will push on the little caret in the bottom right-hand corner. Now I will push down on the little caret to show all of the choices. We need to use a scalable vector graphics SVG format. Choose that one. Now we need to choose a name and a location for the image. Let's start with the location. Navigate to your desktop. Double-click on the folder Structure Figures. I don't know why it's keeping the name of the folder Structure Figures in there. We're already in the folder Structure Figures, so delete all of that. We will call the figure just figure.svg. Click Save. We are now done with LibreOffice. Just to be safe, we will save our work so far. Go to File, Save As. Navigate to your desktop. Navigate to the folder Structure Figures and double-click on it. And we will call this, oops, I shouldn't have been in the search window. I should have been up here. We will call this Figure Maker. And we will click Save. With all of our work here within LibreOffice saved, we can now safely close LibreOffice. If you don't still have File Explorer open, navigate to File Explorer. Then go to your desktop, double-click on Structure Figures. There's the figure that we just made. But an SVG format is not a very common image format. While it did preserve it in a very high resolution, it's not in a common image format that we can easily drop into a Microsoft Word document or give to a publishing house for inclusion in a manuscript. We need to convert it into something like PNG format or JPEG format. To do that, highlight the file, as you see I have here. If you're on a Windows type, using a Windows type mouse, right-click. If you are on a Mac laptop, push with 2 fingers down on the trackpad and select Open with Other Application. You may see Inkscape in the list of recommended applications. If not, you can search for it. Select Inkscape and then push the select button. Everything's too scrunched up for us to see. Hit this button here to expand Inkscape to take up our full screen real estate. Don't worry about what looks like a strange gray border here. This is just Inkscape's way of making your image seem to stand out 3D on your screen. Actually, there is no weird gray border here. Select File from the drop-down menu in the upper left and select Export PNG Image. Then move to this dialog box on the right. Set the resolution to 600.00 dots per inch. Make sure it will be exporting the file to the proper location. So I will click this button here to make sure. We want it to go to the desktop. Within Structure Figures, double click. And we want it to be called figure.png. It's not actually going to save it yet, but I'm going to click what they call the Save button. Saving it will be done when we hit this Export button. We have now exported the image to a PNG image format, which is very common and can be read by all programs. We will now close Inkscape. You do not need to save this. Close without saving. And here's our final image. Double click on it. And this is what it looks like. Notice how crisp everything in it is and what nice high resolution we have. If you're unsatisfied with how cramped these percentages are to one another, you could have used a different font size for the y-axis, but this is what our final product should be. See the tutorial in the show notes below entitled Brief Overview of the Program Structure for Population Genetics for help in interpreting this graph.